Hey, what's up, Rob? So, I've decided this time I'm going to be kind of stealing an idea from your last video. I really appreciate all the insights that you gave about your job, and I'll probably have to rewatch it because it's a lot of good information in there, and so I want to actually be able to understand it pretty well, even though I'm sure there's terminology that I'll hear and it'll never fully make sense probably until you do some of the aspects of it. But nonetheless, I really appreciate the video. Um, am not working yet, obviously, and I think in a lot of ways, economics is probably a lot, in some ways, simpler. Or at least like the concepts of it are simple to understand. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about some things that I learned after coming in and give a little bit more insight into some of the things that I study. Um, I guess to kind of give some perspective, because everybody's obviously got some knowledge of the economy and how economics work and stuff like that. But what I find is like it gets so mumbled with political aspects because it's so important that a lot of times what we actually learn in the book is different than what people refer to as economics, if you will. So it's just some things I figured I could kind of share. This is by no means meant to be like political at all. I just meant that as a kind of a distinction, if you will. But yeah, I guess the simplest differentiation is obviously there's micro and macroeconomics, which a lot of people. So sorry if it's condescending in any way, but I'll just talk about it because I find it interesting. So, but yeah, macroeconomics is just like your large scale, obviously, hence the word, but it's going to be like country based as well as foreign relation, and it's got a lot to do with planning for like a nation. Whereas microeconomics is can still be large scale, if you will, but as large as it gets is like a market. So there are lots of firms, which is just a company, in certain markets. There's all sorts of different types of those, which is where it gets complicated. But essentially, micro comes down to the consumer level and the company level, whereas macro is like nation level, essentially. It talks about trade. I think personally, I'm more interested in the macro side, just because it's really intriguing to me to see like what happens with the economy. And I remember that we'd had a discussion previously, not to go like really in depth of what we talked about, but one of the points that we had brought up was just that it's hard to judge a president based off what's going on currently in economics because things aren't immediate in terms of changes was one of the points that you were making. And that's absolutely true, especially there are things you can make that happen like really fast economically is like within the year. Um, but I'm running out of time and rambling. Macroeconomics can do a lot more kind of like manipulation behind the scenes of like, hey, if we change the interest rate, that is going to affect, well, first it'll affect unemployment. Unemployment then has a large factor in terms of inflation and things like that. And so there's kind of like, hey, if you want to change this and you do A, which affects B and C, and you can make some really interesting decisions. And knowing more about them really makes it make more sense when I hear these things that are broadcast. Are like, oh, they say this is going to happen, but really, from what I've learned, this should technically happen, which is interesting. I like being able to know that. Um, the macro side is more of like, how can you mathematically set your company up to do what is best that's possible? And then it also shares some like psychological aspects of it, of like, here's why some consumers will do it. There's a lot more I want to touch on, but if there's anything, I guess, of particular interest that you'd like to know more, let me know. I'll be happy to share any questions. I'll be happy to try to tackle. But yeah, love you, Rob. There's a little bit more about what I've been studying.